I am 29. I am an inspiring bodybuilder. I've never done a show before, but I want to. I've been working out for 11 years now. Um, I'd never really, I guess, considered like doing a bodybuilding show until a couple of years ago when I re-entered college and all my professors were like, "What do you wanna be when you grow up?" And I was like, "Damn, I don't know, maybe like a coach or something." And so then that kind of like sparked the idea that like these big time coaches have done bodybuilding shows. So I was like, maybe I should do a bodybuilding show to get my name out there. And so yeah, I've just been on this bodybuilding journey for the past like 2 years now. No show date in mind yet, but here soon, I think. Maybe like the end of this year, maybe next year. But yeah,
How did you actually get introduced into like fitness in the gym in the first place?
it was 2013 and I had graduated high school and I had broken up with my high school boyfriend. And I remember he had called me fat. So when I went, like moved on to college, I was like, okay, I'm gonna join my college gym and I'm just gonna start working out. And I just really fell in love with it.
Along the journey of like deciding to start and deciding before you even like took your first step actually in the gym of the workout section of that gym. I mean, what were your thoughts going in? Did you have the anxieties, the nerves about it? Were you feeling like, okay, this is just another thing to kind of get me where I want to be? Or like what were your feelings going into actually stepping into the gym?
I don't really think I had any type of feelings because it was like just a little tiny, just like community college like gym. It was super small, like nobody hardly was ever in there. I actually was a work study in there. And so I would just, whenever my shift ended, I would just work out. And so how I learned stuff is I would just watch like the trainers training and I would just kind of like be peeking over the desk, like, okay, what are they doing? And so I would just like research and stuff. So there was really never any like nerves or anything like that.
And did you said you were watching the trainers. Did you ever, specifically go up and ask or find somebody to be like, hey, this is what I want to do. This is what I want to achieve. So how do I get there? Or like was it all pretty much all just that behind the scenes kind of stuff?
Really just kinda, like, behind the scenes, like, I would never ask, like, the trainers because they were, like, much older than me. We had a couple interns that I would talk to and stuff, and they, would say things like, "Oh, I'm counting my macros," and I'm like, "Okay, like, what are macros?" But I didn't wanna seem like, an idiot, so I would, like, just write it down and then Google it later. Um, but yeah.
Are you a personal trainer, online fitness coach, or gym owner on the verge of burnout? Are you wanting to grow your fitness business but can't add more hours to your hectic schedule? Introducing Trainer Revenue Multiplier, the premier wealth creation system for fitness professionals that helps you earn more and work less. Visit www.trainerrevenuemultiplier.com today to schedule your free business accelerator session. If you're serious about taking your business to the next level, schedule your call today. When did you start to feel like, okay, I'm going into the gym and I have a grasp? Like how long did it take you to start to feel like I'm going in there with some sort of a plan, and when I come out, I feel like I've kind of like done well with that?
I would probably say a year. So when I was at my college gym, I then like a year later, I had gotten an apartment. And my apartment complex, they did a free membership at a gym, Fitness 19 here in Evansville. And so when I started going there, like I remember like a lot of people are like, "Oh, you are doing really good," and like, "Oh, you look great," and they would give me compliments. So I think that's kind of where I'm like, okay, I think I got this down. I think I know what I'm doing. But even to this day, like, because I mean, exercise is science and science is always changing. Like, I'll learn something new or, like a new technique or whatever. I'm like, oh, okay. Like, yeah, I've been doing this for forever now, but okay, I didn't know that.
So during that I guess initial year before you did start to build and gain that confidence, Did you have any like doubts about, okay, well, can I achieve this? Why am I not seeing these things? What do I have to do to get there? Like anything like that?
No, no, I don't really think so. I think I just really did it just because I loved it, and it was just fun. I think it's because, like, not a lot of women worked out, and so I was almost kind of, I wouldn't say, like, the first woman, but just a lot of people didn't know women who worked out, and so they were like, "Oh, like, that's so cool that you do that," or, "Wow, like, you can squat 225." Like, I don't know any woman who could do that, so it almost made me feel, like, special almost, like, "Wow, you're, like, the only chick I know who goes to the gym. That's so cool."
Because like people were in a way like looking up to you, like this person that's doing this thing that not a lot of people that they knew had done,
Mhm.
from a female perspective. Did you start to feel though like it's interesting because, from your like maybe you looking at yourself like, oh, I don't really think I know that much, or I don't necessarily feel like I'm like the most fit or the most whatever, looking per se, but or from the performance aspect. But when people look at you, that's what they see. Was that ever weird, like how people perceived you versus how you perceived yourself?
Yes. Yeah, because like, people perceive me like, "Oh, like, you're so strong," or "You're so muscular," or "You're so whatever," and I don't see myself as that. Like, I see myself as, like, still a small person. And so, like, today, for example, at work, they're like, "Oh my gosh, like, your legs, they're huge." And in my head, I'm like, "No, they're not. They're not, but thank you."
How did you actually get introduced to the sport, or where did you first hear about it?
So it was at Fitness 19, and, like, I remember it like it was yesterday, honestly. I was training back, and this guy came up to me and he's like, "Oh my god, like, your back looks incredible. Like, you should do a show." And I was like, "No, like, I don't really want to." Like, no." And then the gym owner, he was like, "So, like, what are your goals? Like, what are you doing here?" And I was like, "Well, I just like working out. Like, it's just fun to me." And he goes, "Well, do you have, like, a goal body in mind?" And, like, I'd never really, like, thought about it. And I was like, "Oh, like, I just wanna look good." And he's like, "Well, what is your definition of, like, looking good?" And I remember I looked up Dana Lynn Bailey, I'm just, like, Googling, like, bodybuilders, and it was Dana Lynn Bailey. I was like, "Oh my gosh, like, I wanna look like her. Like, her shoulders are amazing." But I never, I guess, wanted to do a show, like, in my early years, because when I was in middle school, I had an eating disorder. And so I was, like, super afraid that, like, if I started bodybuilding and, like, did a prep, like, it could creep back up. Um, and then as I got older, I kind of played around with the idea of, like, doing a show, um, but it's expensive. And so I was like, "No, money is not really it." Um, and then it was 2020. And I remember my sister, she's like, "Oh my god, like, you used to have big arms, and now you have, like, little tiny arms." And that got to me. And so, like, I just started contacting, like, some friends, and I was like, "Do you know of anybody in the area who's, like, a coach?" And then one of my friends was like, "Yeah, my coach is Colton Davis. He's taking on clients." So I started working with him, and he passed away in 22. So then I started working with Justin Jacoby. I'm still working with him. And it was just kind of like friends on Instagram. They're like, "Oh, this is my coach, look him up." So I was like going through his, follow or like his people, and I was like, "Oh wow, like, he's a really good coach." I'm like, "You know what? I'm gonna check him out." And so yeah, I've been with him for a little over a year now.
Are you a personal trainer who wants to scale and grow your business online? Have you been coaching online for years, yet don't know how to incorporate online into your current business model? Introducing Trainer Revenue Multiplier, the premier wealth creation system for fitness professionals that helps you earn more and work less. Visit www.trainerrevenuemultiplier.com today to schedule your free business accelerator session. If you're serious about taking your business to the next level, schedule your call today. When you were initially getting in, and say initially, the first maybe 2, 3, 4, 5 years of it, were you really just at that point kind of playing around with like what worked best and how you're like, or was it more just along the lines of what I find fun, I'm gonna go do, or like how did you initially set those programs up?
In my early years, like, I knew nothing about programming. Like, I would just go in and it was very much like a bro split, like chest and triceps on Mondays, back biceps on Tuesdays, legs on Wednesday, and so on and so forth. And I would just kind of like just do whatever. Like, it had no rhyme or reason. I would just be like, "Oh, okay, I'm gonna go do this. I'm gonna go do that." I didn't write anything down. I didn't track anything. It was just kind of like, "Oh, I'm just doing whatever today." Then so I was at Ivy Tech, a community college, and then I went to USI, and then that's when I started learning because I found my major, which is exercise science. And I was like, okay, so this is what programming is. And oh, okay, so this is why this is important. So,
Getting into bodybuilding, it was going to be this kind of whole new thing. And you mentioned that it was something that you had a little fear, a little, maybe some doubts about if it was right for you for that reason. How did you address that? And was that something that, you talk with your coach about? And it's like, hey, can we maybe kind of taper it to see how it works and then, go from there? Like, how did you handle that?
so I felt as though like I've aged so much from, my past eating disorder. So in my head, I'm like, okay, like, I'm gonna be fine, like, no big deal. And I did a cut last summer and like nothing bad happened. Everything was great.
So, going from training and not not having a coach and then not really being structured on your diet and then going and wanting to do bodybuilding and maybe training more specifically for that and depending on specifically what division you're going to be in, then you have to train more specifically for what the requirements are. Was that where it all going from, like I'm just going to train and maybe everything gets better, to now I have to think about, oh, my legs are this and my arms are this and my shoulders need to
Yeah.
be that and my back needs to, maybe I don't need to work out my back as much or whatever? Like, was that weird to just switching up that training like that?
Yes. So like when I initially first started working out, like it was a total like bro split. And it was just because I liked it. It was fun. And then when I was with Colton Davis, he was like, I think you would do really well in figure. So it was like legs 2 times a week, chest, shoulders, and back, on like these different days. And so I love training like all over. I love training everything. And then when I got with Justin, he was like, I think you would do really well in wellness, which is all legs. And I was like, okay, like, you've done this a lot longer than I have. So sure, why not? So now I train legs 3 times a week, and then upper body is just total upper body once a week. And I'm not gonna lie, like I don't really like I enjoy training legs and I like having big legs, but I miss training like upper body, like having a solid back day or like having a solid like shoulder pump because that's all you've done, for the past hour is shoulders.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Is there any outlet where it's like, I mean, getting to, a somewhat of a workout on these body parts may be it, but is there anything that's maybe you can substitute in? It's like, okay, well, that I can't do this. Now I can kind of maybe do this other thing instead, whether that be just finding something maybe new kind of like passion within, like, oh, um I'm trying to figure out like maybe new foods that work well. So I'm like trying new foods, and that's kind of a fun thing that can replace this other thing that I'm missing out on, like
Yeah.
anything like that.
Yeah. So my diet has changed kind of like a lot here recently because I've always had a low thyroid ever since I was 22, but like now it's just like not working. Like it's like in the toilet. So like I started to cut in January and this cut is like not like last year's cut. And so we've kind of like played around with different foods and stuff. Um, we've got rid of like protein powders, which I like protein powder. So we're trying to like do different, like, oh, okay, let's do more like chicken and more like beef and stuff like that. Um, and I kind of like nerd out on like the whole like sugar substitute stuff. Like last night, I was looking up like dates because you can like basically grind up dates and you can use them as like a date syrup or like date powder as like a sugar substitute. Not that I can use it or I'm going to, but I just kind of like learning about it. Like, oh, okay, I didn't know that about dates.
This podcast is sponsored by Smoking Gun Coffee, a veteran-owned coffee company that strives to give back to those in need. Don't forget to use code TWR10 for a 10% discount at checkout. When you talked about doing those two cuts, what were some of the biggest things that you saw in that first cut that that maybe stuck out versus, and then now looking at this second one, and like what are some of the big things now that you're starting to see?
Oh gosh. Okay, so my first cut, I felt like it was a breeze. Like everything, like I was in school and I was graduating and a new gym opened in town and I was working at that new gym. Um so I was there all the time, I got up, did my cardio, I did abs, like everything just was going great. I was losing a pound like 1 pound every week, like everything was great. And then towards the end, I was like, okay, like I'm starving, I miss chocolate, like I miss just eating, like, and so when the cut ended, we started like a reverse diet. But I kind of just like plunged into food and I just like couldn't stop eating. So I gained back basically everything I lost very quickly. So Justin's like, okay, like we need to start another cut. And it was just like the weight just was not coming off. And I'm like, okay, like what is going on? Like the weight is not coming off. My stress levels are way different now. Like I'm more stressed than I was last year. So I thought maybe that had something to do with it. And he's like, okay, well, how about we go get some blood work? And my thyroid levels were 0.09, so basically like non-existent. And I was like, okay, that makes sense. And that makes sense as to why like, you know, I've kind of been like more depressed. It was like winter months, so I thought it was the winter months, but turned out it was my thyroid. So yeah, last year it was just I mean, it was just a breeze. And then this time around it's just been difficult.
How do you keep kind of your head up in those situations?
I guess I kind of keep my head up because like when I first started, like I was like this tiny little thing. And I feel like my body has changed so much over the years. Like not only like gaining muscle, but like going through motherhood. Like when I got pregnant, like I still worked out, but then some events happened where I didn't work out. So then I lost muscle mass and then I gained it back. So I just feel like my body kind of has like been all over the place, from like the skinny, tiny, mini person to then like, a pregnant mom. So I think I just kind of like keep my head up, like my body can do so much. And so I know like if this year it's not as good as it was last year, maybe next year it'll be even better.
For you, is that something where like thinking ahead about potentially, doing a show and starting a real prep is, and then going through back through the whole cycle, is that something that you've kind of thought about and like, how am I going to handle this? Or like, are you kind of going into bodybuilding as more like, let me just take it as it comes?
Yeah, definitely like take it as it comes, kind of like I wouldn't say fly by the seat of my pants, but just kind of like, all right, let's just do it. Let's just go. And we'll learn along the way.
But what are some of, if you have any like specific goals in regards to like, I want to get better in these areas with my exercise, or I want to get better in these areas with my nutrition, or maybe, talking about stress management, or is it sleep? Like, where do you want to improve before you do kind of get full speed into the, sport of bodybuilding?
So I'm currently a server. I hate it. I really want to do something with my degree, whether it's on like coaching or personal training or something. So So that's just kind of a goal that I have right now is just a career change. Another goal is I'm from Indiana. I hate it here. I want to move to California. I know it's a little expensive out there, but I visited San Diego in December and I fell in love. Uh, if California is not doable, then maybe like Florida, um, because just the sunshine and the beach, like, yeah. So those are just kind of like my two, I guess, goals, kind of like outside of the gym per se, like career and location.
I appreciate you coming on the podcast though, and sharing a little bit
Thank
about yourself.
you. Thank you.
Before we head out, if you want to share any socials or anything like that, you can.
My social is Fitty Schmitty, so it's Fitty_Schmitty. That's pretty much all of them. That's my Instagram, my TikTok, and my Twitter.
If you're tired of searching for a coach or trainer, somebody who knows what they're talking about and has experience, make sure you go check out the new Coach's Corner on weightroompodcast.com. You can find quality, qualified coaches to help you achieve your goals, whether that's in bodybuilding or just general fitness. Stop wasting time and start achieving your goals today. The link to the Coach's Corner is down in the description below.